Welcome to another edition of the Goon Intelligence Sports Podcast Show. Today we're going to talk about the day one picks of the New Orleans Saints. We're going to talk about some of the articles that Sean Payton has been quoted in since last night, since the draft. We're going to talk about our expectations for day two and what can the Saints possibly do to improve at other positions, most notably the linebacker position. So today we're going to start with the reaction to the first round draft pick, Cesar Ruiz, center from Michigan. Now, he does play guard position also, but he's been mainly graded at center. So I'd like to give y'all my initial thoughts on the draft pick. So initially, right off the bat, being very honest, I didn't like it. I didn't like it at all. I didn't like it from a simple standpoint that the Saints, in my opinion, needs or had more of a immediate need at the linebacker position. Right now, the linebackers are Demario Davis, stud. Alex Anzalone, often injured. Kiko Alonso, often injured. Craig Robertson, special teams player. The Saints were so desperate at linebacker last year that they brought back Stephon Anthony, who they traded originally to Miami a couple years ago. We also brought back Manti Te'o, who could not win a position. I don't even think he was on the team roster for the preseason. So I felt as though with Patrick Queen being on the board, that the Saints would take him and immediately get a starter day one that can come in and impact the game. But maybe Sean, Mickey, Jeff Ireland has a different plan. What that plan may be, I'm not sure. What I will say is this. The pick itself, he grades out as an A- through most of the scouts in the league. He is the best center guard available or possibly in the draft. What I will say is this, and I'll tell you why I'm kind of having a hard time coming to grips with this pick. And my thing is this, and this is just my opinion. He's not going to play immediately. I feel as though the Saints have enough offensive personnel to where they can be effective and compete and still having a great offensive line. You have Teron Armstead, who's a all-pro, Pro Bowl tackle. Ryan Ramczyk is an all-pro, Pro Bowl tackle at right tackle. Andres Pete was recently re-signed this offseason. You drafted a center, Eric McCoy, last season in the second round. You moved up to draft him as well. And he was possibly the best pick last year. It made perfect sense with Max Unger retiring and you moving up to select Eric McCoy. That was a home run, and he really, really played well this year. So the weakest link, or the person with the who's not on solid ground right now, is Larry Walford, right guard. He's in a contract year, and from all of the press clippings that I'm reading, there's rumors out that when Max retired, they gave the position and play calling of the offensive line to Larry, and he struggled. Um, so this, from their perspective, they're thinking about upgrading on the offensive line and possibly moving Eric McCoy to guard and placing Cesar Ruiz as the new center. And Larry is the odd man out. My thing is this: I don't feel as though you should create a hole and then patch said hole with a first round draft pick when you have other needs that are more immediate. I just ran down to you about the linebacker position. The center position, the offensive line position, they have depth. You have Nick Easton. You have Will Clapp. You have Michael Ola. I just do not believe that that was the right way to go. If we are in win now mode with Drew Brees in his last season, what are we doing with picks for the future? Now, I'm not saying mortgage the future for now and just live in the moment. And I promise you, I'm not trying to be short-sighted with this pick, but I just feel as though the Saints did not improve. They stayed status quo. Now, I'm going to read to you some of the articles that Sean Payton is now addressing about the linebacker position. And that the linebacker position, as this article quote says, linebacker is a popular pick for the Saints in day 2 NFL draft. We had a stud linebacker right there. We have no second round draft pick. We have a third round, but we do not have a second rounder. So to get a quality day 1 linebacker in the first round is imperative. Not create competition on an offensive line where Larry Warford, according to Pro Football Focus, graded out as the 8th highest right guard in the league. 8th. There are only 32 starting right guards in the league. So he's better than a third of them. And I just do not feel as though this was a smart decision. Now, if you want to say, well, we're going to take the money and release Wolford and pay Alvin Kamara, you're not going to pay him this season. You're not. Sean said, Wolford will have to compete for his position. I just think that's a slap in the face. Be honest with you. It almost implies that everybody else on the offensive line position is safe except yours. When you have performed as the 8th best offensive line or right guard at your position in the league. There's 64 guards and starting guards in the league. And you're the 8th best. I don't know about you, but if you work a regular job, right? You work a regular job and you're the 8th best in the nation with what you do. And your boss brings you into the office and tells you, hey, we got this new kid on the block. You're going to have to compete. It's a slap in the face. Because if anything, Wolford has been more solid than Andres Pete. And you just gave Andres Pete a bag of money 2 months ago. It's just not right. But what I'm going to do is read some of these articles about Sean Payton and this linebacker position that he wants to address now on day 2. How he's going to do that, I have no idea. He's been quoted as saying that he wants to, or he says he's not afraid to trade up into the second round to grab the right player, quote unquote. Who's the right player? Who's the right player? We don't know, because nobody's seen the Saints taking a center. That's for sure. So who else is the right player? You know, it's if the Saints wanted to hide their hand, they're doing a great job of it. They're doing a fantastic job of it. So it says Coach Sean Payton identified linebacker as a position of need going into the second day of the 2020 NFL draft, though he acknowledged the team might not be able to address it with a rookie draft pick. New Orleans might consider a free agent after the compensatory pick cutoff passes by Monday, with veteran options like Nigel Bradham still available. So we want to address the position with another free agent. You had Patrick Queen still on the board. You had the other guy that went before Patrick Queen, Jordan Brooks, still on the board. Kenneth Murray was taking the pick right before you. I would say possibly the Saints might have maybe been ready to take Kenneth Murray and scrambled in the process and selected Cesar Ruiz, who more than likely was just the best player on their board at that time. I don't think drafting Patrick Queen is a reach. We've seen he went maybe 3 picks later to Baltimore, and we wonder why Baltimore historically has a great defense. Historically, you go all the way back to when they drafted Ray Lewis in 1996. They have never had a bad defense. If they don't have anything else, they may not have the quarterback. They may not have the wide receivers. They may not have the offensive line, the running backs, the tight ends, but they keep a defense. And with picks like that, we should know why. Now, while they're trying to improve an immediate need, the Saints are trying to make competition. Sean Payton on the need at linebacker. He says, we've got to fill that some way, shape, or form. Now, you had Patrick Queen right there. You had Jordan Brooks right there. Now, if you need a linebacker and you're desperate, well, you're not desperate. Obviously, you weren't desperate for one. But if you need a linebacker and you know that it's an immediate need, then you got to pull the trigger and you got to draft one. So he says the Saints went into the first round of the 2020 with a glaring need at linebacker. So this article is stating that the Saints very so much needed a linebacker. Beyond the streak of injuries at the position, it says, projected starters Kiko Alonso and Alex Anzalone ended last year with injuries. There isn't a long-term fix on hand, with Demario Davis, Anzalone, and Alonso all as unrestricted free agents next season. Why are we not drafting a linebacker? You have 2 of the linebackers that are injured, that are your projected starters, and the one linebacker that is a machine. All 3 are unrestricted free agents next season. Why aren't we drafting a linebacker? You're going to tell me that with 3 of your linebackers, 3 projected starters, by the way, as unrestricted free agents, and you pass on that position in the first round. For a center / guard, because I know a lot of people out there, they want me to throw that guard position in there because that makes the pick seems a little bit more valuable in their eyes. He just doesn't play one position. He plays guard as well. It don't matter. Can he play linebacker? That's what we need him. Now, if he can play center, guard, and linebacker, hey, I'm on board, baby. But if he can only play on the offensive line, and we have to remove an offensive lineman for him to slide in there, because we have no holes to fill now. Remember that. Keep that in mind. You have no holes to fill. You have to take one off to put him on. Then what are we doing? Also, now, it says, and this is not my words. This is coming from a news article on Saints Wire. With LSU Tigers prospect Patrick Queen available, once the Saints went on the clock at the number 24 pick, it appeared to be an easy match. So the Saints choosing to go in a different direction with Michigan Wolverines center Cesar Ruiz rubbed fans the wrong way. I'm included in that number. You rubbed me with a Brillo pad. Not Cottonelle tissue. A Brillo pad. It doesn't say center / guard also, by the way. It says center, Cesar Ruiz. Not center / guard. Like I just don't understand why people as Saints fans are caught up on this add the guard position too, because he plays multiple positions. Look, let me tell you something. You can only play one position at a time. One. If you line up at guard, you're playing guard. If you line up at center, you're playing center. And let me address this as well, because what I see is people saying this from a football standpoint, that if you don't have an offensive line, you have nothing. That is very true. It's very, very true. But, got to put this but. But, although, contrary, the Saints already have an offensive line. The Saints have 4 Pro Bowlers on their offensive line. 4. Teron Armstead, Ryan Ramczyk, Andres Peat, and the guy you want to replace, Larry Warford. All 4 of them are Pro Bowlers. And Eric McCoy graded out as the best rookie center last season. And I told you, Larry at his position, the one you want to remove, albeit it may be about money, graded out as the 8th highest guard in the NFL. 8th highest. There's 64 of them total. There's 32 teams. There's 2 guards on each, 2 starting guards on every team. That's 64. He graded out as the 8th. Pro Football Focus does a wonderful job with grading players. And you want to replace him. That's cool. That's fine. You can do that. It's your team. But don't lie to me and tell me that linebacker is also a position that we need to fill in some way, shape, or form. Because if you were going to do that on the free agency market, you'd have done it by now. You had an immediate need at wide receiver, you went and got Emmanuel Sanders. It ain't rocket science. It's not. And also, I want to come from it at this standpoint, the Saints, when it comes to their offensive line, they do one thing and one thing well. Well, I shouldn't say that. One thing well. They do one thing only. Pass block. Why do they only pass block? Because Sean Payton is allergic to running the ball. So from that standpoint, if you want to say, oh, this guy is a grader, or he mauls people, you got to run the ball to maul someone. Otherwise, you're stepping back and you're just pass protecting. The Saints, historically, under Sean Payton, are not runners. A couple games this season, the Saints ended the game with less than 10 rushes. One that comes to my mind immediately is the Atlanta Falcons game after the bye week in the Superdome. The Saints ran the ball 9 times. 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. In a 60-minute football game, they ran the ball 9 times. And that's not the only time that the Saints have forgotten their run playbook at home. A lot of people came to me and they say, Goon, we lost the playoff game with pressure right up the middle. Okay, that's been a philosophy to rattle Drew Brees since he came into the league. Pressure up the middle. So yeah, we got to improve our center guard position. No, what you need to do is establish a run game. If me, from a Mike Zimmer standpoint, that's minister, and I'm gonna give a brief history on this. Mike Zimmer and Sean Payton were in Dallas together. Mike Zimmer practiced against Sean Payton every day in practice. He knows his tendencies, every single one of them. Sean Payton has not changed his stripes. So Mike knows what Sean wants to do. And Mike, being a great strategist, he's a good defensive coordinator. Head coaching, he's kind of, no. But defense, he knows. He takes his best defensive linemen and he moves them inside. His best pass rushers, Danielle Hunter, who is a top 5 defensive lineman in the league, and he puts them inside. And the man went to work. Now, had he left him outside on Ryan Ramczyk or Tehran, you probably wouldn't have heard from him that day. He'd have probably ended up on a milk carton, because Tehran took J.J. Watt and put him on timeout. Ryan Ramczyk took Khalil Mack and put him on timeout. You didn't hear from them, and those two are the absolute best at their positions. So what does Mike Zimmer do? He takes his defensive lineman that's going to be on the outside, that he knows don't stand a snowball's chance in hell of creating pressure with those 2 bookend tackles out there, and he moves them to the middle. He moves them inside. And it was a success. Aaron Donald, best defensive player. Some people say he's the best player, period, in the league. Created pressure up the middle, and Drew Brees, in a throwing motion, broke his thumb on Aaron Donald's hand. It's pressure up the middle. They say we got to improve that. First of all, it's Aaron Donald. It's Aaron Donald. Let's get that. It's Aaron Donald. You're not going to do much with him. And if you think that Aaron created pressure with Larry Warford there, then what do you think he would do to that rookie? He's going to eat him for lunch. So when you say things like the Saints, they need to improve on their interior line, just remember that some things that you think they're going to improve or start to do, they're not. And for the life of me, I can't understand why they wouldn't, because our most success came our Super Bowl season, of course. And what did the Saints do different than they've done every single year before and since then? Run the ball. Drew can't throw it like he used to. Drew's arm is very accurate. He's pinpoint accurate. He has somewhat good velocity from 0 to 35 yards. After that, on the 36-yard, the ball starts to look like a wounded duck. It doesn't get down the field, which is why they brought Taysom Hill in to throw to Harris in that playoff game to Minnesota. And Drew, being the quarterback that he is, I'm not going to say he's egomaniac or anything, but him being the player that he is, he comes in, and or maybe the next drive or the drive after, and he wants to throw a deep pass too. Can't let Taysom get all the love. And what happened? Interception. Not only did he throw the ball, underthrow it, he threw it into double coverage. I'm not saying that Drew is not the answer, though. Don't get me wrong. If the Saints have any Super Bowl aspirations, it's going to be with Drew at quarterback. But I need y'all to understand this. He is not the same quarterback that won the Super Bowl the first time. His play has declined the last 2 years. And that's just old age. Father Time is undefeated. He is. What we have to do as Saints fans is get prepared to be disappointed. This is what I've learned the last couple seasons dealing with the Saints. And you may see it different than I do. You may see it different than I do. You may say you're crazy. A lot of people call me crazy. But I'm not. I'm not being short-sighted when I say this. If you want to create competition on the offensive line, I don't need to do it with the first round draft pick. I can do that with my third rounder, my fourth rounder, my fifth rounder. Because I don't have a second rounder. So my first pick has to be a home run. Now, I said Cesar Ruiz grades out as the best center in the draft. We know that. That's fine and dandy. That's great. But we don't need him. We don't. And if you think this is a Super Bowl pick, then you're sadly mistaking yourself, and you're just being a fanatic. You don't. They could have took a punter, and you probably would defend it. And I also see Cameron Jordan coming out. People are screenshotting his tweet about, I like the pick. We don't have no glaring holes. What else do you expect him to publicly say? What else do you publicly say? What else? You expect him to come out and say, terrible pick? Why would he do that? Publicly, I will never speak down on my employer. Never. If you do, you don't want a job. So, but privately, privately, and if you probably liquored me up, I'll tell you everything you want to know. Publicly, I'll defend them to the hills. So that tweet, throw it out. I don't care what Cameron Jordan said. Sean Payton, he's not going to come out and tell you that he really wants a linebacker. I wouldn't be surprised if the Saints does not take a pick at linebacker. I wouldn't be surprised about it. Now, what I do think the Saints would do on day 2 is more than likely take a wide receiver. Emmanuel Sanders is a great pickup. He immediately provides a legitimate number 2 receiver. Not on none of that Ted Ginn goofy stuff. Well, he's just in this day and age, Ted Ginn is a one-trick pony. But I don't believe Ted Ginn is on the Saints roster anymore. None of that. We're going to address the wide receiver position from a undrafted rookie perspective. Keith Kirkwood. He's gone, by the way. Carolina Panthers. Tre'Quan Smith, I'm cool on him. I've seen him for the last 2 years. So I think the Saints could possibly end up with a wide receiver. Who that may be, I don't know. I see T. Higgins is sliding. But I also believe T. Higgins may go in the second round. T. Higgins, wide receiver from Clemson. So if the Saints were going to trade up for that right person, it could possibly be him. But what are we going to what are we going to trade? Are we trading Larry? Because from Sean's quote, he prepares to bring Larry into camp to see if Larry wants a new contract or not, or if Larry wants to continue to play. He's going to have to compete. And also, from this perspective, just popped into my head, the news article about Sean canceling all OTA activities. No spring training this season. Not to say that there might be any. We don't know. But the NFL is holding out, waiting on states to open up to possibly salvage some kind of spring. But Sean has already said it doesn't matter if the NFL opens its facilities. The Saints will not be practicing during the spring, which means your center position is behind on the playbook. Or any rookie for that matter is behind on the playbook. But most people seem to believe linebacker position is more about instincts than rather play. But we shall see. I'd like to thank y'all for joining the Goontelligence podcast show today. Let's get ready for day draft 2. I say day draft 2. I meant draft day 2. Sorry about that. Well, join us next time. I will be possibly maybe doing a live during the draft. If you watch this video before the draft on day 2, you could possibly see me on YouTube with my reactions to every pick. Also, before we go, I'd like to give a shout out to the Atlanta Falcons for drafting AJ Terrell. That is by far the worst draft pick that any NFL team made on day 1. That any NFL team made. It could possibly be the worst draft pick to start the new decade of the 2020's decade. There is no reason that the Atlanta Falcons should have taken AJ Terrell. I'll try to keep this PG-13. The last time we seen AJ Terrell playing in the national championship game against the LSU Tigers, he was being flambéed by Ja'Marr Chase, a sophomore at wide receiver. Although the Fred Biletnikoff award-winning wide receiver, but AJ Terrell didn't stand a snowball's chance in hell against Ja'Marr Chase. So what do you think can't guard Mike is going to do to him? He could possibly come out with a chef hat on his helmet and wear an apron during the game because he's going to be out there sauteing AJ Terrell. But maybe the Falcons have a plan too. Thank you again for joining the Goontelligence Sports Podcast Show. I'll see you on the next episode.